Welcome back to Helmets Off. Scott Mitchell here with Julie McQueen, outdoor host and a very nice person, according to your. So I want to get back to something you said, because I'm a huge outdoors person. So, in fact, I was on my way back from Cuba. I spent 10 days fishing there. You also love to fish as well. It's not all hunting, and I'm a huge outdoor enthusiast, and I do remember the first time that I actually shot a deer, and it is an emotional thing.
Yeah.
And so how do you come to terms with that? I know for myself, I don't kill something just for the sake of killing it and the sport of it, but I actually enjoy the meat. I use the meat. I even fish. I love smoked salmon. In fact, I have some in my fridge right now that's amazing. So how is it that you deal with kind of that whole issue of, one, harvesting animals, and two, the vicious attacks you receive from people about what you do?
Yeah, I love it when people ask me about this, and I know it can seem like a sensitive topic, and I know that it can seem like maybe I would be offended that it's brought up or whatever, but I love having this conversation because it's something that I live my whole life for. I'm very passionate about the reasons why I'm a hunter. I'm very passionate about the fact that I'm proud to be a hunter. I know when we had that conversation on the airplane that day when you and I first met, I've got a tattoo on my right forearm, and it's a deer that I shot, that I harvested, and I live every day with a memory of this deer on my body where I have to look at it all the time. And it provided about a year's worth of meals for my family. And it's a very meaningful thing to me. So it's not something I take lightly. I can say I spend hundreds of days in the field every year, and I'm not out there killing animals every day. So I want to put that out there first. I'm not out slaughtering hundreds of animals like a lot of people might think. I just came out of the backcountry for the past 2 days filming animals. I'm behind a camera. I didn't pull a trigger. I haven't shot anything, but I've spent a lot of time with the wildlife because I love nature. Whenever I do harvest an animal, it's something that I take very seriously. I practice with my archery equipment almost every day of my life. I'm very efficient with my firearms. So, I pay a lot of attention to that so that when I do have a shot on an animal, it's something ethical and quick, and it's much less violent than what we actually see happen in nature when an animal dies. It's not a beautiful thing when an animal dies in nature. So, I think that there's a common misconception that hunters are out there just killing animals, and that's just not true. There's science-based information that we have where the hunting strategy for North America is used all around the world as the way it should be, because we are actually improving animal populations using hunting as a method of conservation. So not only are we out harvesting animals and keeping the populations of those animals in check so that they're not dying of starvation, overpopulation through disease, malnourishment, the habitat can't sustain certain numbers of animals in certain areas. So we're using hunting as a method to prevent animals from dying in even more horrific ways in the wild. We're also volunteering our time as hunters to go out and transplant animals. So we go out and we actually capture animals and move them to areas where there's better food or more opportunity for them. So when I'm out harvesting an animal and I pull a trigger or I shoot an arrow and I take an animal, it's a very personal process. It's something I've always invested a lot of time into, getting to that point where I pull the trigger. And then a lot of people don't know this. I process the meat myself almost all the time.
So when you're out, you actually have a meat grinder, a processing operation with you when you go, because you
Yep.
travel all over the place. You're in several states throughout the year. On different hunting opportunities. So you're very mindful of this all the time, because most people don't do that, Julie. They don't.
Right. Yeah. And now that's not to say that in the right opportunity, if I'm on the road and I have an animal here that needs to be processed, the other thing is, I support small businesses around the country in that way. I will take it to a local processor and I'll pay full price to have them process this animal, and then I'll also pay them to ship it to me back home whenever I get back home. So if I don't process it myself, I'm paying to have a small business, process it for me and then ship it to me. But all of the meat is always used, whether I'm using it, my friends and family are using it, or some of it I donate to families that maybe didn't have a good hunting season and they would like that meat.
Yeah. What's your favorite meat? What do you
I
enjoy
like
most?
elk a lot.
Yeah.
Elk is really good. It's versatile. I can make anything out of elk. But elk and deer are really great. Surprisingly, bear meat is delicious. We have to be really careful with that. You test the animal for trichinosis because that's a very serious thing. And then you have to cook it properly, almost overcook it to make sure. But if bear meat is done right, it's wonderful. And, that opens the whole conversation about predator hunting, which,
right.
Bears are predators. They're not just cute little cuddly bears out there living in the wild. They're killing a lot of our elk and deer herds. A lot of the fawns and, the babies that the cow, elk, and the deer are having, they don't survive within a few days because the bears come in and kill a lot of those babies every year. So, by managing the predator population, we're helping the rest of the animal herds in those areas.
So would you say that the conservation efforts are putting the animal population and everything, the state of hunting, in a good place? Is that safe to say?
Oh, absolutely. And it's a scientific process. It's not just a bunch of, rednecks out there shooting all the animals. It's
right.
very scientific. And we have projects in place that are keeping track of the animal populations in specific areas. We collar a lot of animals so we can keep track of how the herds are moving to different areas. Because, as people are building homes, these are the lands that the animals have been living on, and we're just pushing into it as humans, and these animals are displaced. And so where do they go? Where do they go find food and shelter and, all of the things that animals need? So what we're doing as hunters is we're making sure that these animal populations are thriving and growing in the right areas, and we're managing it through hunting. And the other thing that a lot of people don't realize is back, I don't even know how many years ago, hunters decided as a group that we wanted to put tax dollars back into the entire hunting community, the conservation community. So through the Pittman-Robertson Act, we actually dedicate our tax dollars on anything that's spent towards, hunting equipment, rifles, ammunition, anything like that. And that money goes directly back into conservation efforts. So a lot of people say, oh, well, the animal rights groups are doing a lot for the animals, when in reality, as hunters, we are donating more money to conservation than any other group in the world. And we're the ones out volunteering our time to help relocate herds where, if somebody's building an entire housing community, who's going to help those deer find a new place to live? So we go out and we actually personally put them in a better place, and we don't kill them along the way.
Right.
We love the animals. That's the message that I always try to get out is I love animals. I love wildlife. I spend more time with it than most people do. And do I harvest them once in a while, using hunting as a means for conservation? Yeah, I do.
Yeah, very well said. I can speak for the state of Utah. The hunting opportunities and the conservation efforts here have been phenomenal. As far as building houses and where do the deer end up in my backyard, I have a spare bedroom. They're more than welcome to come in the house and use the spare bedroom. So we get along just fine. Okay, I want to switch gears here for a minute because you were a professional poker player.
I was.
Like you were legitimately a professional poker player. What caused you to do that? I mean, how do you go from hunter to poker player?
Yeah, so like I said, so for about 15 years I've been involved in the hunting industry. But in between there, I took some breaks and tried out some other careers along the way. And poker was one of those. It seemed like a good idea at the time. And that's one of those conversations you never think you're going to have with your family or your parents. Like,
right.
Hey, I've made a career change. Surprise. I'm going to play poker for a living. But you know what? I did really well at it. I actually treated it like a job. So I had a notebook that I would keep where, I kept notes on people people who I would play regularly
Ah,
at different cash games or events.
scouting
And
report.
what's that?
You had a scouting report.
I did. Yes,
Yes.
I would actually keep very specific notes on people.
Oh
And
my
if I
goodness.
didn't know their name, I would say, the guy in the red shirt who's really tall does this when he's bluffing, and like notes like this. I would keep track of my hours and how much I would win or lose. And so I could actually go in and look back at my notes over the past month and see on an hourly basis how much money I was making at that job. So it was definitely like just like any other job or career. It just seemed very strange to people that was what I chose as my job.
So give me your best poker face.
uh, yeah, I'm not so good at that part.
You don't
But
have you don't have a poker face?
No, that's the cool thing about it. It's so poker is divided between two things. It's mathematical and psychological. And so if you have just one of those things down, I mean, you can be relatively successful at it. Psychological would be, I can look at someone and kind of tell, if their heart rate is increasing, or,
Yeah.
sometimes you can look at someone like right here on their neck, and if their pulse increases, you can kind of see it, and they're getting nervous. Body language, I study people's body language a lot, so I can tell if people keep doing a certain thing with their hands or with their eyes. I keep track of those patterns, and you can begin to tell a story through the way a person is acting.
Interesting. So did you use glasses? Did you have sunglasses on or no?
No, I really didn't, and I
Oh my
didn't do
goodness.
the headphones thing that some people do.
None of that.
I would go just like this and sit, and I would just play the game. And I never really tried to be good at the poker face thing. I mean, I figured if the players that are sitting at the table with me, if they're good enough, they're gonna know, what my tells are, or what it is I do when I'm bluffing.
Okay, we have to take another break, but when we come back, we have this special segment called the Gauntlet of Truth. Okay, and you have to actually give truthful answers to my questions. No lying, no bluffing, no spin.
Okay.
Are you willing to do it?
I will do it.
Okay. All right. I'm not even going to give you the qualifiers. We'll just come back and do it. You won't have to go to jail for your answers,
Okay, perfect.
and it's not going to mess up relationships.
Oh, good.
Okay. All right. All right. We'll be right back in just a minute.